in those situations, usually the military are just embarrassed to say, well, we had. So they will, instead of admitting it, they will just deny it or whatever it is.
Right. And I like Dr. Greer's perspective on things I've heard him speak about, in as much as we're talking about a friendly here. Because listen, with all the advancement of what they have, if they really had come here to destroy us, take over our planet and stuff, all these eons of time that they've been present, we wouldn't exist.
Well, but I'm not so sure that I agree completely with Dr. Greer, though. I mean, I think that there are all kinds.
Oh, I agree with that.
And that's also the case with humans, you know, just that there are friendly humans and there are unfriendly humans.
And there are those with other agendas.
Right, because it's true. I mean, I don't believe in a UFO invasion. If the UFOs were going to invade us, they had the perfect time to do it right after World War II.
Yeah.
When most of the military establishment were destroyed in
and
Europe.
The world was pretty
they
much
could have taken over.
Yeah.
Why wait 60 years, 70 years when we develop all these weapons, right? So on that I can agree with him. But on the other hand, there is a residue of cases, primarily in Brazil, where there are some UFO cases that are aggressive and they're not friendly. So you cannot generalize. And also it's dangerous to say, well, they're all great and they're all wonderful. Look at what happened to the Mexicans when the Spanish came.
That's right.
And I discussed
well,
this.
Historically, in any invasion, in any takeover, any power come to take. But that brings me to another point. Being of some Cherokee bloodline on my mother's side, our people have never, I was raised totally accepting that my ancients, that I am a seed, a root of the ancients, and our ancients are from the Pleiades. So as children, we were raised to accept that we are star seeds, that we you know, our DNA came from another system altogether, Pleiades being a galaxy of its own. So there weren't questions in amongst Native Americans who are still very much in touch with their heritage and their original wisdoms.
Exactly.
In our hieroglyphics, in our symbology and everything else, it's still very present. So what's happening in what you're doing and the work that you're doing is complementing and bringing a lot more of that forward to the fact that I myself am involved with actually being a tablet keeper, to where a lot of Native Americans are approaching the Vatican, and the Tibetans have come forward. They want to sit down with these tablets, and especially the Vatican, who has a storehouse of artifacts. Historical artifacts and tablets that can now be actually investigated, that as far as native and indigenous people, they accept that the ancients left information to help us in these times, to prepare us for certain global and planetary changes. And so that brings me to my next question with you. How do you see all of this fitting into the 2012 prophecies and what's going on in the world as far as the year that we're in, especially this being, I feel, I don't know that you would validate this, but I feel, even what I felt coming here to this one, that we're turning another corner. You know, that a lot of people were saying, okay, ufology, it isn't drawing the crowds anymore, we're not getting the numbers, we're not doing this, we're not doing that. That's not true.
No, that's not true.
There is no lack of attendance here.
Correct.
Okay, and there's no lack of interest.
No, our magazine is doing very well.
Yes, everything is.
Because it's very well produced, so I think that was part too. You know, a lot of the UFO publications were kind of
raggy.
Raggy.
Did you say rag?
Right.
Okay.
So
but like
I think if you produce a product that is properly done, you know, that is
well
presented, then people will listen. We've known for years that when they do the sweeps on TV, it's no accident that they throw all the UFO shows.
I know.
And they'll do the Alien Invasion Week on Discovery and History Channel and National Geographic and all these places, you know, and so. Even though a lot of those people they're probably not members of MUFON or anything like that. But there is an interest, there is a latent interest.
I think it's something within our own DNA that we just see constantly.
That could be too.
To reach out.
Well, I was friends, you know, with the late Zachariah Sitchin. I knew him for many years. And I remember Sitchin mentioning, he said, you know, scientists tell us that we're in our evolution or whatever, we came from the ocean. said,
Yes.
but why is it that whenever philosophers or people are looking for their origins, they're always looking at
Looking
the
up.
sky. They're never looking at it.
Never looking at the water, they're always
Yeah,
looking
right.
at the stars, right?
Yeah, so that was a good
It's
point.
good, yes. But he
20
was quite, he had a lot of good points.
Yeah, 2012. Well, I don't know. I'm a little bit of an agnostic on the 2012, but we'll see
Okay.
what happens. Even though I wrote the cover story for the next issue of the magazine, but I just basically did a journalistic, job. I mean, trying to present, all angles
All
to it.
sides.
Yeah, all
Okay.
sides. I mean,
Okay.
well, because a lot of the experts on the Mayan studies, the
Yes.
archaeologists, the people that actually can read the Mayan language and all that, even though they do agree that the date is correct, so there's no controversy.
Question on that,
There's
right.
no question on that. There's a creation date in the Maya calendar, which is the year 3114 BC. Nobody knows why that date. That date is still a mystery. But somehow that is year zero for the Maya calendar. And there's what they call the long count.
Yes.
Now, there's still larger cycles, so it's certainly not the end of the world.
No,
that is
absolutely
a
not.
misnomer by the media. But it is the end of a cycle of 13 baktuns, as they call it.
Yes.
Each baktun being 144,000 days, and which is about 5,125 or 26 years, depending on your
Yeah,
time.
25 points.
And that ends, of course, on the solstice. So that much people agree. But since when people talk about the Mayan prophecies, then it gets a little bit more tricky because the Mayan books were unfortunately burned by the Spanish. There was a bishop in Yucatan. The first bishop of Yucatan will go down in infamy in history,
Yes.
Diego de Landa, because his instructions was grab every book that you can, because the Mayas, unlike the Incas, they did have books, and burn them. So a few survived, a couple of codices, the Dresden Codex and the Paris and Madrid codices, because I guess they had been sent to the courts previously, but the rest was burned. So we don't know what would have been there.
Right.
It's gone. However, fortunately, the Mayas did a lot of inscriptions on stone,
Yes.
and those were preserved because there's a mystery with the Maya civilization too that a lot of people are not aware, which is the collapse of the ancient, the classical period of the Maya culture around
Yes, very
900 AD. Nobody knows still to this day what exactly happened, but somehow they abandoned all the cities, which in a way for the future was good because it preserved them.
Yes.
And they weren't destroyed by the Spanish or by anybody.
Right.
They got filled up by the jungle, and they were left unmolested for until the 19th century, basically.
Yes.
When a lot of
They
these
started
cities,
uncovering
they started
them.
uncovering them.
Yes.
So that civilization collapsed, but not the people, though. The people still remained there. And then there was a new Maya civilization, but with a lot of Toltec influence. And that lasted until the Spanish conquest. And then there was a second collapse of the Maya civilization. So, who knows? But it is fascinating times, though.
So basically, on your own personal perspective of this, though, when you try to put the pieces together to best of your understanding, and you have a genius mind here, so I'm asking you to go into there, give us a personal perspective on it. I mean, there's so many people who have projections on what it is, and my own one is that we simply are starting. We are turning that corner in consciousness, and that's what that date means to me.
That to me is the most interesting part too. I mean, I don't believe there's going to be any kind of mass alien contact or whatever. I don't think so. I mean, we're having plenty of it, but it's just a gradual process that will continue until eventually, I guess, it comes to its fruition. The end of the world, I certainly don't buy it. I mean, yes, because there will be catastrophes. We're having catastrophes all the time.
We've been having them.
We don't need the Maya calendar for that.
Yeah.
We're having tsunamis and earthquakes and volcanoes, and that's because we're mistreating our planet so badly, and that will probably continue to happen. But the one more interesting concept to me of this whole 2012 phenomenon is the concept of the noosphere. The noosphere is a term that was coined in the 1920s by mostly two people that I know. One was a brilliant Russian scientist called Vernadsky. Vladimir Vernadsky.
Yes.
Brilliant man.
Yes.
And the other one was also a very brilliant man, a French philosopher, Teilhard de Chardin.
Oh, yes.
He was also a Jesuit.
Yes.
An anthropologist as well.
Yes, he was.
Yes. And so what is the noosphere? we have the magnetosphere, we have the geosphere, we have the biosphere,
Yeah.
right? And what these guys say, well, all these things happen, biological, magnetic, geographical. There's also a noosphere, which is a mental realm.
See there, and I accept that, don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, that just, for me, that just resonates. That just puts it all in perspective. I totally accept that.
Right. So, people have to become aware of that, and I think that's the potential of the 2012.
I do too.
We don't even need. I mean, the Mayan calendar is almost like an excuse because it provides something to focus.
Yes.
So if that, and the man who's considered basically sort of the pioneer of the 2012 phenomenon, even though he passed away last year,
Yes.
is, and I'm sure you're familiar with him, Jose Arguelles,
Yes.
right? Who wrote
Yes.
The Mayan Factor book back
Yes.
in 1990,
Yes.
in 1987.
Yes, he did.
And he did the famous harmonic convergence, right?
Yes,
and
he
this
did.
was sort of the beginning because prior to Arguelles, nobody cared about the Mayan calendar except for the people in the Guatemala highlands
I
or
know.
the archaeologists. You know,
That's
if you
right.
were an expert in Mayan studies, yes,
Yeah.
you would go and try to figure with the numbers, zero,
Yes.
whatever,
Yes,
how
it's true.
something.
It's true.
But the public couldn't care less. I mean, for them, it was just a totally arcane, obscure subject.
Yes.
And then comes this man, and he wasn't the only one, but he was the first one, Arguelles, and he really brought it into mass consciousness.
And he brought it to the layperson. He
Right,
put
correct.
it in terms that it wasn't so complicated that people couldn't look at it and understand it, and put it together, and
Right.
actually begin
And
to
he was
see how to open and
He was a
flow.
very well-educated man.
Oh,
too. He was
very,
a
very.
PhD from
I-
the University
yes,
of
I
Chicago.
worked.
Yeah,
I worked with Jose
yeah.
many times.
And
And it was really good to see, too, how that helps us begin to have a responsibility for time and for us to actually understand that time is what we're dealing with, the changing of times.
right.
But I actually know that right now, along with UFO understanding, like you and I started this out saying, we already know that we have the majority that understand and accept. They're not questioning anymore. This is true. This
Yeah.
is factual. There's too much documentation. There's too many credible people's voices out there now to have all of this. It's not true. This is crazy, or
Right.
that you and I are
Right.
weird. Okay, that's gone. Now it's like there is now evolving out of that a consciousness, and like the key word out there in all kinds of groups and organizations is consciousness.
Right.
Even the program we're talking on is Consciousness Unlimited. Okay,
Right.
consciousness, that, and to me, that's what I see the 2012 giving us, and I believe that our acceptance of the greater picture of ufology, to actually know that there is that
Right.
no matter how much we may still debate the how that's there and the what is there, it is there, and in exploring that, we can only become better. We can only have more capacity and intelligence.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that one of the great side effects of the UFO phenomenon, once it's accepted, and we are in that process, right, but it's still not totally accepted by the mainstream, is that it will force people to completely, really, eventually to change everything. I mean, it's the end of nationalism. I mean, if we're dealing with other intelligences, then, being
Planetary, isn't it?
American and being, Mexican
Don't make
or
any
whatever,
sense.
not making
It
any
doesn't-
sense. That was good for the 19th century.
Yeah.
That was the era of nationalism. But at that time, it made sense because you
Yes.
had different pockets, right? And then they
Mhm.
became unified in certain countries, we had their language or their religion or whatever. And that served its purpose, but only up to a point, because then nationalists led to all these horrible wars,
And suffering,
Yeah, and
suppression
suffering,
and suffering. And for
and
me,
we're still stuck on that.
Yeah,
So
well, we're coming out of that,
Yeah,
though.
but we need to get out of that.
that's why for me, my Native American spirituality and base, as well as my interest in studies and assistance in Buddhism, is that we are so much bigger than that dogma. There's
Right.
so much more to us as beings. And we, by our own intelligence, will not destroy this planet. We have abused, but
Yeah.
we will correct. And it can only get better from here. And as far as I'm concerned, you're one of the masters in this that are helping us do that. And I am so very, very grateful that you've taken this time with us and talked.
It was my pleasure.
Yes, and we'll see you again.
Yes. Okay.